Hello, good afternoon, good morning, good evening to you all, depending where you are that you're joining us from this wonderful globe of ours. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the V20, the Human GPT online conversation. My name is Faith Mangope, and it is an absolute honor and a privilege to be taking you through this conversation that we're having this afternoon. Now, I must just say, very big thanks to Stellenbosch Business Institute. We are very honored to host this V20 conversation because we believe really that values are the foundation of leadership and that compass for decision makers under uncertain times. And I think many of you can agree that we certainly are under uncertain times. Now, the world does not suffer from a lack of intelligence or innovation, but what it does suffer from is when values lose their voice. And today we would like to give those values of voice. So, welcome, welcome, welcome. And thank you very much for joining us for this 1 hour high impact conversation. Now, without further ado, I would like to bring in and welcome our thought leaders into this particular conversation. Dr. Mark Nasila, who is a luminary in artificial intelligence and data science and the Chief Data Analytics Officer at First National Bank. He also shares his expertise at the Singularity Group, specializing in AI, data science, and data strategies. He is a leading member of the National Institute for Theoretical Physics and Computational Science. And I told you, we've got thought leaders with us this afternoon. Dr. Nasila, as well as has got an innovative approach at FNB, has revolutionized risk management and forensic due diligence through advanced AI systems. Of course, we've also got Dr. Dumi Magadlela, who is the founder and the CEO of Africa Coaching, where he coaches executives, leaders, and their teams across multiple sectors globally. Dumi teaches coaching and team coaching in leading coach training institutions globally. He's a founding member of the African Board of Coaching, Consulting, and Coaching Psychology, and co-founded the Ubuntu Coaching Foundation, promoting coaching in disadvantaged communities. And I think Ubuntu is going to be one of those themes that resonate with us throughout the course of this conversation. Now, if the G20 sets economic agendas and the B20 drives businesses, what does it mean for us as leaders when the V20 asks us to lead with Ubuntu, dignity, and equity? And how do we let values and not just numbers guide our decisions? And with that, I would like to welcome our thought leaders this afternoon. Dumi, Dr. Mark, thank you so much for joining us this evening for this wonderful conversation.
Thank you so much, and great to be here. Looking forward to this invigorating discussion.
Thank you, Faith. This is a great opportunity for us to engage, and great to be here with you, Mark. Let's get into the conversation. You asked a question,
Absolutely.
Faith, so I wanted to lean in on that.
Let's get into it.
We live in an environment that requires us to just reposition ourselves as humanity, to say, how are we showing up in these technologies that are here now that we can't avoid? So I'm fascinated by how human beings are interacting with technology now. So the theme for V20 is living values. So the question then is, how am I living what values lead me in doing what I do? So very, very important that we are hosting G20 and V20 this year. So Faith, thank you. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. And let's get into the heart of it, because a lot of times when we're talking about V20 and these values that we're speaking with, and Dr. Mark, let me bring you in quite immediately on this one around when we're talking here about V20, because, individuals who are listening to this conversation may think, okay, I hear the V20 concept really, but what is the essence of it? Maybe let's unpack some of these V20 values of ours as we navigate the conversation. So when we're talking about these V20s, what exactly are we speaking about, Mark?
So, Faith, we're going through a time where technology, emerging technologies, and especially AI have been very topical. We've seen so much investment go into technology. Just to paint the picture, since the advent of ChatGPT, just in 2023, that 1.4 billion of investment went to it. last year alone, 69 billion. Projected by 2030, we're looking at almost 2.9 trillion. And people or even organizations are doing this because they just want to deal with the current reality, but they want to drive efficiencies. They want to reimagine themselves. They want to come up with different businesses to keep up with what's happening. But what we're also realizing, these technologies are impacting humanity. They're coming out with outcomes that will determine whether you'll get a job in the future or not. They're coming up with outcomes that are actually intruding our cultural and ethical values. They're coming up with outcomes that are influencing the future of work. So we're all thinking about how people will make a living. And most of these values influence how the nature of investment as well as how it's designed. And we're talking about just responsible aspects as a human value. We're talking about trust. We're talking about things like bias or fair outcomes. We're talking about values that will respect ethnicity and cultural aspects of every human being. So those values become core to what is actually influencing what the future will turn out based on the decisions we're making today.
Yeah. But Dumi, in a world that we've seen right now with the fast-paced moving introduction of artificial intelligence, what you'd often hear is the conversation of most leaders being more concerned around maximizing profit and being as efficient as possible whilst harnessing AI to achieve that efficiency. But not a lot is being said about the values that align or the values that should be aligning this AI. How then do you reconcile where leaders are saying, I hear all of this around values, but Dumi, I'm just trying to make a profit here. And I'm trying to maximize on the profit with as little input as possible, harnessing the intelligence of AI to allow me to achieve this goal of retiring and retiring early. So where do we start and how do we start consolidating ambitions with but was taking note of the values that need to go with harnessing these ambitions?
Brilliant question. Faith, by all means, to build on what Mark said, by all means, yes, seek to make a profit, grow your business, and the environment is ready for all of us to leverage that and make the most out of it if we position ourselves right. The first position for me is, what are the values that are guiding how you're doing business? We need values-based leadership. Part of V20 South Africa is looking at these values are dignity, Ubuntu, which means I am because we are. I can't be me, and I can't succeed alone without anyone else. The individual is really is subservient to the collective, respecting the greater good, not serving me, myself, and I. Integrity and ethical governance are part of the V20 values. Agency and accountability. We need to understand that people will make their own decisions, human agency, and then equity. These values are anchoring V20 South Africa. And our leaders, with our Sherpa, Prof. Bonang Mohale, and together with Dr. Tabia, Dr. Priya, and a big part of what they've said, in line with what you're asking, is saying, how are we positioning ourselves as G20, of course, but as business people around the world, not just from across our borders here as South Africans? We're saying that, how do you prioritize restorative economic justice in an environment that says, I need to look out for me, I need to look out for my business, I need to make money? We are part of a global ecosystem, not just of human beings, but of living systems that human beings rely on to make an effective and impactful life. Faith, we need to understand that we can't just extract or just take and just grow individually or in the global metropoles. We need to understand the impact of our actions. This is why our theme is living values. To live those values, we need to take everyone with. And this is why the value of Ubuntu is at the center, at the heart of that. Because we are in this life thing together, Faith, not separately.
And if you've got any questions for Dr. Dumi or Dr. Mark, please just post them up on the chat box. We will be facilitating and integrating some of those questions with you, because I think that a lot of us want to get into the conversation, and a lot of us want to engage on exactly what does it mean when we harness these V20 values in a system and into AI that will allow us to surely thrive, but thrive as a collective and thrive whilst ensuring that humanity in itself as a concept is preserved. So please just make use of the chat box, and then we'll facilitate the conversation with them. But also, whilst you are thinking about some of the questions to pose to Dr. Dumi and Dr. Mark, I'm going to just trigger you a little bit with some of these questions. And one of them is around, if you had to choose one value to embed in the human GPT, what would it be? I'm going to repeat that. If you had to choose one value to embed into the human GPT, what would it be? I'd love to hear from you. We'd all love to hear from your thoughts as well. So please just, if you would like to contribute to that conversation, especially around the question or around if you could choose just one value to embed into the human GPT, what would it be? Please just make use of the chat box, and then we'll ensure that indeed we facilitated and threaded through the conversation with our thought leaders as well this afternoon. But Dr. Mark, when we're talking here about leaders being able to harness AI and how is it that we can make AI work for us? Is it important for us to appreciate the fact that as much as there's AI, though it knows everything, but AI does not understand anything. So I cannot expect empathy from AI. I can't expect human consciousness and understanding from AI. So, in that way, as leaders, how would we and how should we ensure that decisions that are guided by AI still reflect the very same values that we're speaking about today? If AI does not knows but does not understand, how do we embed these values, especially as leaders?
So, Faith, in the past couple of years, we've already seen that AI has limitations. We've seen AI has mishaps, and most of those mishaps come from the fact that at the advent or even adoption, there was a lack of human values. I can give you a few examples. We had the Amazon recruitment system, which demonstrated that it was not trained on fair data, and it was discriminating against women. We had Facebook data where private data was compromised. And when we talk about data, which is a fuel for AI, it's not just numbers. It represents people's lives, their location, their privacy, where they spend on. We had the Google photo case, which was mislabeling data, where Black individuals were being classified as human gorillas. If you want me to convince you further, today's ChatGPT has already got problems advising young children to go kill themselves or even to go die, or you could actually get a prescription of how to commit suicide. We had credit applications that are discriminating. And leaders have to lead with humanizing adoption of technology and not lead with the technology itself, because the prowess of technology, as much as it's exciting, like today on ChatGPT, you can generate human text. Leaders have to take the accountability of the implications on humanity, on human values, on human dignity. And therefore, they have to, for example, design and adopt technology with purpose. Make sure that the human aspect of purpose is represented and measured. They have to drive stakeholder engagement. You see, the value chain of AI adoption or even implementation is a series of human decisions. And I'll tell you something, AI or even technology does not invite itself to you. We say, okay, we want to use it, let's go put money. We've got data scientists, we've got all these big money investments. The stakeholder engagement is important. Then ethical guidelines and principles are critical. Data scientists and AI researchers are very passionate about the technology. It's important that they're held accountable on ethical implications, because ethical implications are what should guide the design of how the technology is used. And in some, give you an example, in our institutions, we do teach data science ethics. One of the areas that leads to AI bias or compromise of human dignity is understanding a problem. You solve a problem the way you understand it. If you don't have ethical considerations or even have a diverse team, understood it. But I want to finish off. The value of a strategy comes from what you measure. Businesses, organizations are very good at measuring and reporting profits annually. It's important that leaders instill strategies that measure not just the embedment of values, but also the outcome from a human perspective. So for example, if you have a credit scorecard, is it a fair one? If you have a chatbot, does it have fair conversations to people? So it's important that that's measured. What gets measured gets done. And that's why profit is always at the upfront of every organization. And this should be at the forefront of every leader today.
But Dr. Dumi, in the spirit of trying to solve the world in an hour, how then do we start becoming, because ultimately we often face a situation where a lot of us as leaders, though we may have the ethics, though we may have the values of Ubuntu already embedded in the way that we organize and we do business and the way that we show up, we can't speak for the major corporations who are in the business of actually manufacturing and producing this AI or inventing and evolving this AI. So therefore, on one side of the spectrum, you've got leaders who are saying, I'm on board with ethical leadership, but the creators of this artificial intelligence may not be on the same boat. So then how do we ensure that the conversation that we are having today, it's just not a conversation that is limited to the church? In other words, preaching to the choir. How do we ensure that indeed the very same conversation that we're having reaches the echelons of creating, where those that are creating the AI are able to take heed of the human element embedded?
Yeah, thank you, Faith. And I'll build on what Mark said. It's the leadership values and ethics that we live and lead by. What humanity needs is to come back home, to use Mark's word there, to rehumanize every space, including this one we are on now. There are how many of us here now? 51 of us here, including the other non-sentient beings that are listening in. The point is we need to take into account that where we grow and socialize and enculturate human beings, every space, from the home, the school, the workplace, and any other platform where human beings interact, we imbue that, we fill that up with rehumanizing values, Faith, values that help us see each other. When I greet in my language, isiZulu, I say sawubona, means I see you. But many times we don't see each other because we see the role you play. And I look at you and I look you up and down and say, what can I get from this one? We have lost over time the humane value that we must live by. What we need are leaders and businesses that operate from a space of understanding that the one thing that machines, the algorithms, a lot of the work that what Mark is talking about, what machines cannot take away from us is our humanity. How do you know that I'm not a robot right now, Faith? I wrote in my name that I'm human. How do you know for sure? Maybe it's my bot that operates and does these things that I do, because that technology is there now. I can clone myself and come here and do this work right now. But the work, what I'm talking about here in terms of answering your question is, we need to rehumanize ourselves. The Ubuntu, for example, just being humane, human with an E, is the software we need to install in every human being. That's how we are going to anchor ourselves in who we are. And then we partner with technology and we use the technology for good, or it uses us for good, because we can teach some of the things. Mark will tell us that. We need to work together with the technology, but we need to be more who we are, humane beings that understand that we need each other, all of us together on board. Otherwise, we've lost the game already.
Yeah. And that's
Mark.
a great point, Dumi. That's a great point. You know, when you talk about, okay, is it a risk that we're preaching to the converted or to the church? Even the leaders in AI today are learning that humanity, there is no AI without humans. I want to give you examples. There's a company called Klarna in Europe that decided to retrench employees because they thought they developed these chatbots that could do everything. Then they found out that the chatbot was going round and round. It could not solve queries, only to realize AI has a limitation. I think IBM had the same thing in the human resources space. And upfront, it's very important. Now, Klarna had to go back and bring back the same employees at even higher costs. So we're not just talking about values that come in from, from a value, psychological perspective, but values that actually protect and drive the same profits, the same, technology investors are looking for. And at the onset of strategies, it's important, and maybe I will sound controversial, to introduce conflict in technology adoption, healthy conflict, because you have to question the implications of how you do things. By the way, we live with conflict every day. Today in the morning, we chose to either get out of bed or not. That's conflict. Chose maybe go to gym or not. That's conflict. You chose to greet someone and say, how was your day? That is conflict. You could just walk by. And in terms of values, what is the balance between profit from a technology and the implication of bad values? In terms of transparency of these technologies, where is the balance between the complexity of AI versus explaining to someone what it does? Because one example we had was Wozniacki, the Apple co-founder. Him and the wife went to apply for credit. Do you know what happened? The wife was given an interest rate 10 times higher than him. So think about this. You share the same assets, same house with someone, yet one of them gets. So that transparency versus complexity. Then what about culture versus the regional application of AI? That's conflict we must ask upfront at the onset of every strategy. And then you realize that organizations that are winning today, and look at the MIT report, only 5% are winning because they've humanized, they've placed the people at the center, they've empowered them to make sure that we explore the strengths of being human, because that's what's needed to complement the role of technology in realizing successful adoption of technology.
Then, Dr. Dumi, could we therefore say that we need to get to a point as leaders where we recognize that artificial intelligence is a tool, not an answer?
I'll hand over that to Mark, because I may say something here with the kids listening. Human beings are fascinating. I can't say creatures, but we are fascinating beings. And I think it is very important for us to understand that this technology is here, and it's listening, it's learning, it's growing faster than some people can imagine. Mark, you can talk to that. So yes, we have each other, and we have the human race, humanity over millennia. The one thing that has made humanity top of the food chain is how we collaborate. And there are over 8.5 billion of us in the world today. There's only one Faith. There's only one Mark, one Dumi. There's every single one of us. And we bring the gifts of our lives it can best be expressed in collaboration, in connection with each other. And we can do that better than any machines can right now. They're learning that very fast. And the thing is, what is it that we're losing while we're trying to be like machines? It's that humanity that brings us together, that has carried us through millennia. Because we've learned to separate and disconnect and fragment. What we need now is to come home to who we are. And no one will help us there except ourselves, not the machines. Mark?
Yeah, Geoff Hinton, the godfather of AI, was asked today, if you are to recommend a job for your children, so this is a godfather of AI. He said, I think I will ask them to prepare to be plumbers. So, and the narrative around AI as a tool, it caters for a small substrata of jobs and tasks. And it's been like that since the first industrial revolution. Remember when the automobile industry was invented? They shifted from horse-drawn wagons to cars. So if someone says, okay, use AI as a tool, it will cater for only scenarios where the tool can work with people. So like in the Industrial Revolution, they didn't say, okay, all horses, if you don't use a car as a horse, you're not going to exist. It was not like that. Horses were cut out. So what this technology is doing today is doing four things. The first one is cutting out some tasks and roles. But while it's cutting out some, I can give examples. Like for example, today, if you go to a complex, there's very few security guards because they are using technology to monitor the complex. There'll be 100 times more. Today, almost everyone has a dishwasher because technology does that better than us. But then you go to other areas where now you need human warmth. Like, for example, being a fitness trainer. There's a human aspect that can also, this is where now AI becomes a tool. But they must be prepared to use that, like being a teacher. There's aspect of teaching that must be humanized. And this is where human warmth is very important because there's so much empathy that is needed there. Then the third one is where there's low empathy, but there's so much creativity needed. And I'll give you an example. For example, being an editor or being a scientist, where the critical thinking aspect is critical, but they have to leverage technology to do things faster, effectively. And then the fourth one is where you create new opportunities, new jobs. We're going to have lots of ethical scientists who just deal with ethics, people who understand bias. We're going to have many legal practitioners. We're going to have people who capture data. We're going to have, but organization must think about that at the onset. You say, listen, we've got 1,000 people. If we're to look at this strategy, where will this 1,000 be if we're to realize value? If you do that too late, you're going to end up with a situation where you invest in technology, then you've not prepared people. Then what happens? You retrench people to justify for the cost of technology because the technology is doing the exact thing people are doing, but just faster. I can tell you a lot of organizations with AI today are not creating new value. They're creating the same value faster, just faster decisions. So it's important to
Let's bring in some human consciousness into this conversation from our wonderful guests that are joining us from this wonderful globe of ours. If you do have a question for Dr. Dumi or Dr. Mark, please just post it onto the chat box and we'll be able to facilitate that conversation throughout and thread in some of your questions throughout the conversation. I'm going to go ahead and start off with Kim asking, could you share examples of how an organization might measure human value-based outcomes? Could you give examples of how an organization might measure human value-based outcomes? Maybe Dr. Mark, let me start off with you and then Dr. Dumi as well to add into that. I've got a couple of questions as well.
So human values are measured by input and outcome or implication. When I talked about, for example, investment in technology, the types of problems we're prioritizing, how do they implicate human beings? If you choose problems that are just aimed at profit, then you'll end up with profitable outcomes. How do you equip people with skills on ethics? How do you make sure you hold them accountable? Having frameworks that prioritize values and prioritizing. So those are measurable inputs that influence the outcome. You see, as much as it's important to measure the outcome, you see, AI and technology make many decisions 1 billion times faster. So you could actually be measuring a disaster. So the best way to influence the outcome is to make sure you measure the input. In terms of the outcome, it's a way to monitor and hold people accountable. And in some countries, because AI is an extension of human being, there's even legalizing and holding people, taking people to jail. Like, I mean, if you remember the famous Boeing 737 MAX plane that actually killed people because they prioritized profit and rushed into having this plane before testing it properly. There was actually a litigation process. So you measure the input so that you can influence the outcome and use the outcome to drive accountability of whether people adhere to the input. But also there's other things like frameworks, or continuous training of people on things like values, and so that people can be more human while leveraging technology.
Yeah, I'll lead on to that, Faith. Thank you, Mark, for that. Kim, you shouldn't ask difficult questions like that because it's about application now. But yeah, thank you, Kim, for that. I'll maybe answer it, Faith, with what I've been part of for many years in organizations, using Barrett values. Richard Barrett is well known for values and developed very beautiful, complex ways of measuring values in organizations. But what we need are measurable instruments and tools of measuring values that are applicable in a daily basis for every one of us. And to do that, we need to have benchmarks, Faith, to start to say, where am I right now? The one thing I always ask leaders I work with is, what anchors you? What are the values that anchor you? Mark is talking about measurement. We need to measure our own impact and our own values, how we are anchored in those values. What drives me as a leader, as a CEO of a business? What makes me me? What makes me show up this way and not that way or the other way? What are the values that drive me? Each one of us have the opportunity to measure how we do that. Have a benchmark. Where do I start? What am I available for as a human being, as a leader? And what am I not available for? I'm definitely not available for brown envelopes in a dingy restaurant. I'm not going to do that. But the question is, what are the leaders that are leading the development of this technology available for? Why are technologies doing what Mark was talking about? Why are these technologies not compliant with DEI, diversity, and the rest of that? Why are they not as impartial as they should be? Because someone fed them that. What are the ethical groundings of those leaders? How do you measure that? You measure it with the outcomes. The results always tell you. That's the biggest measure. And the question for every single one of us here is, what are my values now? What do I need to tweak and change and improve on for me to show up differently, ideally better, positively than I did yesterday? Then that's the measure you need.
Sure. I've got another question coming in from Leslie Boddington saying, how do we introduce value-based leadership into schools? Now, this is going to be very interesting, Dr. Mark and Dumi. I'm thinking that it presents a very lovely challenge to both of you. How do we introduce values-based leadership in schools? The Human GPT is already developed when entering the workplace. Dr. Mark?
So I think at the beginning of this year, we So China and America make it compulsory for AI to be taught in primary school. There's a school in Texas today that totally changed the curriculum so that students are using technology to learn the routine things, but they're spending a lot of time with teachers now that that there's more time to actually learn about life. Because at an early age, if you make time, it's very easy to instill values in young children, and they remain with them until they apply them in life. And the best way to do is we have to make sure we change curriculum. We have to make sure we take away things that won't be important in the future. It is scary that today we have two generations that are learning about skills they won't be able to apply in the future. And it's because the curriculums are that way. I mean, a lot of us studied a lot of subjects in school that we don't use today. We're not saying they're not important, but there's certain things that influence everything, like values, critical thinking, problem solving, the implication, Ubuntu, like Dr. Dumi said, the implication of that, sharing. Some of them are very natural. And, someone said, it's even possible to be taught how to hate. So think about that when it comes to technology, the same way people use technology to attack others. That's what they've been taught to do. But at a young age, if we can teach students and young children good human values, Ubuntu, sharing, just collective accountability of things, then technology will work for us because they will transition that into the technology.
Sure. When it comes to looking at some of these core values that we have, Dr. Dumi, and I mean, we're talking about V20 values and the like, but if you had to think of one core value that we are at risk of outsourcing to the machines, what core value would that be?
I would stretch it beyond a value. A value would possibly be honesty with yourself. And I would stretch it more to practice more than the value, because the value will inform the practice. People are outsourcing their capacity to think critically to Grok, for example, or ChatGPT. And previously we saw that with Google. Google is now even a verb. You've got to Google this. You got to ChatGPT it. You got to do that. You got to AI it. You got to do that. We don't trust our own capacity to reason and think. We outsource that to machine. We say it's making things easy. But what are we losing? Our capacity to engage constructively, critically, with data, it started a long time ago, but that's how technology evolves, that we've got to retain the ability to engage with our environment critically. We don't do that. So the value of honesty, of knowing that this I don't know, this I may learn and know, and the integrity of the human being to say, I'm here now, and this is the range of things that I have capacity to engage with. Many of us don't do that. We want quick solutions, quick wins everywhere. It's the dopamine of the click, and I want that to be done here and now. And then we have no patience to build something. So I like the example Mark gave about the father of AI saying, get your kids or grandkids to learn plumbing. Which robot is going to learn real plumbing in that? There are memes now about robots trying to prepare a meal, trying to cook and really messing it up or burning down a house. So the thing is, what are those things that machines can't do? But it starts with the honesty and the grounding of ourselves in those values. But my favorite one is Ubuntu. Because as a human being, that's the one thing that really stands me apart from any and everything, that draws me closer to my fellow beings. And that unites us, that keeps us grounded in what is needed now. And that will make us even better utilize the technologies that are emerging now. and AI is one of them. We partner with it, grounding ourselves in the values of Ubuntu and integrity of being human.
You know, as you were speaking here, Dr. Dumi, as well, around how AI risks having us outsource our ability to think on our feet and to think and be diverse in our thinking and to connect. You're using the robots that can now make dinner, which means that we don't connect anymore through food, through using our hands, and therefore losing that essence of our humanity, of Ubuntu that you're speaking of. It really looks at how is it that we can raise ourselves to consciousness so that we don't become led by the AI, but we still continue to lead AI as leaders within this age. I've got another question coming in from Nelly Klaba, Dr. Mark. And the question is around bias. Bias in data often mirrors bias in society. What practical steps can leaders take to prevent AI from reinforcing inequality? And what ethical indicators or frameworks should be embedded into the AI governance so that success is not just about speed or accuracy, but about social good? What a loaded question. I love that question coming in from Nelly Kava there. Mark, it's over to you.
Dumi said we shouldn't ask difficult questions. So listen, there's two things that I feel, two categories of solutions here. And we've seen in countries where the role of AI is actually to solve inequality, because there is confirmed inequality. So for example, coming up with solutions that allow everyone to access credit, because the previous solutions and the previous data sets could not be used to cater for everyone. We call that financial inclusion. Or for example, coming up with alternative ways to measure productivity at work, so that you don't use an approach that is not fair. And this implies coming up with strategies that look at societal needs. That's why sometimes we talk about data science for social good or AI for social good, aimed at just solving inequalities and making sure that people have access to jobs, or coming up with industries, AI-enabled or technology-enabled industries that will result to jobs, because you need people to be able to power in those industries. So that is one. The second part is driving accountability in developing AI solutions. And good data scientists, for example, understand that you need to have diverse teams, because you need to get an opinion, an inclusive opinion on the problem you're solving. Leaders who are doing well understand this. That's why if you go to Google today, Silicon Valley, they've learned the hard way that if you just put one ethnic community or one race, they will solve the problem the way they understand it. So having diverse teams is very important. The second part is, and linked directly to the question, is that there is no data set that is representative in this world. Also, it's natural to be biased. We've been biased since we were born. We like certain things to others. We like certain colors to others. We like certain meals. That is bias. How do we introduce that conflict that I mentioned earlier and test for bias in the data? For example, if you work for an organization as a data scientist, compare that data to the national census data. Is it representative? Then the whole value chain includes, for example, respecting cultural aspects of the impact of the technology. And people must be held accountable for that, because if you don't measure that and hold someone, they will not do it. We had an example in the US from a retail company called Target, where they were so much obsessed with predicting what you're going to buy next. And they could predict that someone is pregnant. And they had this very accurate prediction, and they sent a marketing message to someone. And what they didn't know is that the daughter who was making purchases shared the same phone with the father. So the father found out through the phone that the daughter was pregnant because of the way the marketing was done. So think about cultural implications. In Africa, for example, there's certain communities where things like pregnancy should be kept secret until at a certain time. And just imagine now your relatives are finding out through an AI marketing message. In China, it's even worse. In China, you're not allowed to pronounce the name by the surname. You could have everything perfect. If you pronounce Xi Jinping Xi, the deal is done. You have to respect that. And that's what we're talking about, human dignity. And then up to execution. If someone tells you, don't contact me with a marketing message, do it next month, then that must be respected. With the Facebook incident where data was compromised, privacy, and it was even used to predict people's emotions. These are things we're talking about. They must be measured from the onset of understanding a problem to how you're using the output from technology. Once you hold someone accountable, then they will do it. They will come up with fair technology. They will come up with technology responsibly. They will think about, but maybe if I'm from Zulu, and the customer or the user of this solution is from vendor, let's get someone from vendor to help us understand this problem. And the last part, which is important, we're introducing what's called the fourth line of defense. A lot of organizations develop solutions and they just test it within the organization. They get a few staff members and they're like, it's fine, it's cool, it's going to make us this profit. How do you feel about it? It's good. Technology today is impacting humanity. Test it with humanity. Find out about the bias early enough before it becomes $1 billion problem or before it becomes a life-threatening problem. Facebook did that very well. They were about to use Facebook data to estimate insurance products with a company called Admiral. They tested it with customers through a process called design thinking. And they found out that there's no customer who's happy with you using their social media data to estimate insurance. Even though it was accurate analytically, they pulled out and said, no, we're not going to do this.
Sure. Sure. And, when you're talking about accountability, let's hold ourselves accountable as human beings for a second here, Dr. Dumi, as I pose this question to you. What do you hope that AI never learns from us as humans? I'm going to start and say, I hope AI never learns jealousy, because that would probably be the end of civilization once AI has been able to evolve into a jealous entity. But what do you hope that AI never learns from us as humanity?
How to be humane, because it can never learn that. If it learns that, we are toast. So I want to share something. Am I enabled to share the screen? I want to share something here for everyone. No, I'm not. That's fine. I'm going to read it very, very quickly now. And this, Faith, is that you can outrun that which is chasing you, like a lion, a dog, but it is nigh impossible to outrun that which lives inside you, within you. What is it that drives? We're talking about values here, living values. G20 and then V20 values, the values that make us us. There is no way technology can learn and they can predict, like Mark is saying, and make so many messes. It's learning very fast, and it can really it can learn a lot about how to behave in a way to emulate my mannerisms and everything, and really be like me. But it's that intuitive power of being humane in us and empathy at a core level. This is why we need what I call radical human connection. Machines cannot learn radical human connection. So that is the one thing that I would like us to promote more among ourselves, connect more, tune in into ourselves more. Because there is no way that can be. It will take a while to do that. And it can be done superficially, but human beings know. This is why when you see someone on a screen, excuse me, I'm going to be a little graphic here. chopping someone's head off. You shrink from it because something in you says that's not okay. A machine can't do that. What is it in you that makes you do that? That's not your family member, someone you don't know. Just you never met them, never seen them, but something in you says that is not right. What is that in you? That's your humanity. And we need to tap more into that. That brings us together. Because if the wise elders of the village, the global village, don't teach the children, the village idiots are not resting. They will certainly teach the children how to be like machines, not like human beings.
Sure. That's very powerful. I've got another comment that is coming in. Beautiful conversation. We all agree on harmony, empathy, compassion, togetherness, and value systems that will keep us as humanity together on the right track. This is coming in from Mike and Azam. AI is wonderful, of course, and a definite source of efficiency, effectiveness, accuracy, and speed for humanity to use it as at its best. It depends on their value systems, ethics, as mentioned, just like what is available around us. There's loads of porn media and prints, tons of alcohol and other toxins, guns, bad practices, and much more. How we lead our lives is based on what we choose, based on our volition. Humanity must get the necessary moral education from early years to learn how to lead and deal with the environment, accessories, and all that may be available. On the other hand, we're worried about our jobs and all. Imagine humanity working only a few hours in the day and spend the rest with their families, community, and also enjoying the rich and amazing nature at their disposal. I think that was more of a comment than it was a question. And thank you very much for that too. And AI can make or break our life and living, but so much of it depends on what we feed it with. As we used to say, garbage in, garbage out. Why not feed it with Ubuntu, peace, harmony, love, and all sorts of equalities as well? And quite rightly, just to anchor on that, Dr. Mark, regarding how is it that we become more intentional? Is this now call to action to perhaps start at the very same school level? I think Leslie Boddington had mentioned it earlier, that if we teach our kids young around values and intentional value systems at a time when AI could literally take over as the teachers and the parents. If we teach children younger how to inculcate and demonstrate those values, then as they grow into an evolving world with the AI as part of the partnership, they will be more ethical and have Ubuntu and not be led by the AI. Is this now the call to action to say we're not supposed to just be looking at that leadership level, but rather be looking at the level of school?
Exactly. So young people are the future. A lot of leaders today, and to be honest, without offending people, they are learning this technology while it's being discovered. So they have limitations around it. We need young children to understand the technology, how it works, not necessarily become algorithm experts, but to understand the building blocks, to understand ethics and how ethics influences output. And if you ask me today, my biggest concern in relation to even what Dumi said, I actually think a lot of AI things we're talking about are very overstated. Those capabilities are very, very overstated. We've been talking about this artificial general human intelligence. And young kids, if taught well, they will actually suppress those myths and misconceptions that human beings are very resilient and very complex. We interact with the physical world in very unique ways. We learn, we adapt, and we are going to be someone else tomorrow and after tomorrow. And therefore, just because ChatGPT can generate text because it was prompted, I want a young kid to say, okay, this is just an outcome of an algorithm predicting the next word and the next word and the next word. Or a young kid should know that if they need help, they should speak to their mom and not go to ChatGPT. we're now having a new situation of what we call AI psychosis, where people are even falling in love with ChatGPT and having boyfriends and girlfriends there. They should get help elsewhere. And if they don't learn this at a young age, and you end up getting carried away. And this is the exact reason why for 3 years we've been talking about ChatGPT and technology, and only 5% of organizations are getting it right, because we don't understand this technology. And I think the upcoming generations will get it right, because they will understand it better, they will control it, they will reduce the excitement, they will understand its risks, and they will even focus on building humanity more and those values more, so that the technology can work for society.
And very quickly, I've got one coming in from Kim again saying, in layman's terms, how do we teach AI these values? I mean, is it the question around, is it even possible to teach the AI these values? Dr. Mark, and then Dumi?
Yes, everything AI does, it's what it's been taught. It's a program. AI is a program. It's been told, move from here to A to B, and then if this and this is an outcome, or everything we do. So you have to influence the creator so that the solution can have values. It's almost an extension or a reflection of who we are.
Yeah, exactly. I'll run very quickly, Faith, on this one. Thank you, Mark. One thing we need to be conscious of, Faith, is that we have the opportunity now to shape our environment better. We have the pressure of technology coming into this space, so we can become more humane than we've ever been. And that builds what Mark is talking to. Our children in schools, we've got to instill these values of being human and humane in early childhood development, in education, and get our young people to understand that being human is a greater value than having stuff, than knowing how to navigate technology and how to do that. But being human, connecting to and with others. The example Mark gave of a child going to the mother, that we need to be the adults that our children deserve, that lay the foundation for them to be more humane than relying on technology. We need to be those role models that they can count on right now.
And thank you very much. And just like that, time exceeds us, and we have to conclude this conversation this afternoon. Dr. Dumi, Dr. Mark, I just thank you so much for your valuable insights. You are incredible thought leaders, and for just driving it home in terms of the importance of humanity and the role that we as human beings play in ensuring that artificial intelligence is something that we use and not something that leads us. Much appreciated. And it really does round up with a thought regarding G20, that though G20 builds the world's economies and the B20 builds its businesses, then it is up to the V20 to build its soul. And I thank you with that. We get to wrap up the conversation as well this afternoon around how do we build the soul. And on behalf of the Stellenbosch Business Institute, our host for today's conversation, we do believe that dialogue matters, because it reminds us that leadership begins with who we are and not just what we achieve. With that, thank you so much to everybody for joining us for this conversation, for another leadership, and for another conversation on V20, the Human GPT. Much appreciated. Have a fantastic rest of your day. Dr. Dumi, Dr. Mark, just an absolute pleasure having joined us. Have a fantastic rest of your day. Goodbye and God bless.